All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Yes, we are having a show. I'm excited. Are you kidding? Joining you remotely from Washington, D.C. What's the problem, Albert?
Oh, no problem. I just wanted to be included in the opening shot.
Oh, good. Okay. I see Albert, and I just kind of assume that there's an issue of some kind because, I'm using a new technical device to join you. And so,
Albert, thank you.
I'm with Albert, and I'm with Kim. And I'm
Kim, how are you?
Very excited for David Katz, who will be here today. You gotta love the David Katz. You gotta love any legal issues. It's not all about Trump. It's not all about things related to Trump. In fact, David Katz, I would think, will start with the P. Diddy thing. One question I would ask about the P. Diddy thing is, first of all, these are insanely intense charges against him. And I would wonder, maybe it has something to do with the intensity of the charges, why he hasn't been released as having to post some insanely high bond. He is remaining behind bars, isn't he, Kim?
Behind bars, no bail.
That's a question for David Katz as we get started on this great Thursday. And I'll tell you that the location from which I am broadcasting is my childhood home. And this brings back so many great memories and also so many uncomfortable memories.
This house has some high ceilings. Beautiful.
Oh, well, this particular room does anyway. Yeah. This room and another room that joins it, they were visions of my dad. My dad wanted my dad wanted something that overlooked, which is a great idea, what I'm about to tell you, that overlooked the garden and the backyard. And he really wanted an area which invited the outside in, Mm-hmm. And this is his, and he borrowed money to build it. This is his vision come to life. I think it is beautiful. It may be the most beautiful part of the house. So the rest of the house is, hasn't been changed much since the 1960s. I've often talked about the fact that, coming into this house, my folks' house, was like walking into a museum. I mean, just like, oh, it's 1975. Just open this closet. Nothing has changed.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you open any one of the cupboards in the kitchen, and it's the 80s all over again. I mean, by the way, it's a mixture of the 50s and the 80s. My mother, who is still going strong, I have spent hours speaking with her. Just last night, we talked about all kinds of things, and I love talking to my mom. Look, I love talking to my parents. My father, brilliant man. My mother is also brilliant, Fulbright scholar. And she was a longtime educator, gave up her life in the classroom to raise kids. And then she was raising kids while also working in education. So my point is simply that to talk to her is a gift as well. And I consider it a special gift, having just lost our father just a few months ago. But I did think of my dad last night, because my mom and dad used to talk to, I used to love hanging out with him and just talking. My dad was like a human Wikipedia, and mom also. But as we talked about the Lindbergh baby last night, there they are. We talked about the Lindbergh baby last night, and we're talking about, the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby and Charles Lindbergh, who was clearly an Nazi sympathizer would be the polite way to put it. He was absolutely an anti-Semite Nazi sympathizer. He had secret German families overseas. Charles Lindbergh, who was this a shining light of patriotism. He was certainly one of the most, I think, the most famous guy in the world at the time, right, as an American aviator. And Lindbergh, meantime, was carrying on these secret families in Germany and beyond. So anyway, my mother knew all this stuff.
How many secret families?
I think there are two that we know of.
Wow.
2 with kids. Okay, so you have the Lindbergh world kind of populated by The Secret. Okay, so a lot of stuff happened in Charles Lindbergh's world that we didn't know about. The stuff that was advertised was the Lindbergh brand. So anyway, I never would even thought we'd be talking about this, but this is what I was speaking to Mom about last night, and she was great. And I thought Dad would be able to essentially spit all of this stuff out, everything about Lindbergh, with like you're reading a Wikipedia. Mom and I were actually reading Wikipedia, but Mom got us started on it. She had a lot of the details. It was pretty great. She knew all about the German secret families. That was what really made it. I mean, look, this guy, as I say, German sympathizer, Nazi sympathizer. Okay, it's one German sympathizer. I feel weird saying that because there are many Germans who. I mean, look, many of the Jews who were killed in the Holocaust and across Germany were Germans, right? I mean, so anyway, he's a Nazi sympathizer, and his child was, as you know, kidnapped. It was that was the story of the century at the time. And
Lindbergh baby. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Lindbergh baby. And we got talking about that. And that in itself, and he being the most famous person in the world and having his child kidnapped, that in itself might have a half-life that would extend into a conversation to today. But what I'm saying is, she mentions the secret German families that Charles Lindbergh had. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's already fascinating past with the kidnapped child and with his fame and with his Nazi sympathies. It all even gets more interesting as his kids grow up and some of them talk about it. Anyway, it was a fascinating conversation I had with my mother. So,
Wow. The picture of the one son on the far right looks exactly like him. That's interesting.
Oh,
the guy with the
really?
yellow tie.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
they look a lot alike. Mm-hmm.
Pretty interesting, too, that last thing I'll say on this, as I researched it, and that's a small R on research, I just kind of skipped around with talking to Mom. I saw that 2 of the German families, the secret families that he had, were sworn to secrecy, and they maintain that secrecy to today. Many of them haven't. I mean, this is a family with, I think, one has 2 kids, the other has 2 or 3 kids, and nobody's talking. So you can check that, but I think that that's pretty much true. It's what I read last night, that at least in large measure, those German families sworn to secrecy by Lindbergh at the time still haven't spoken about the entire secret life that they had with Charles Lindbergh. He spoke to them in English, by the way. He never learned German. As much as he was a Nazi sympathizer, had German families, all the rest, he spoke to them in English. So, yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right. So now, Albert, did you tweet or not? I'm predicting. Don't answer. Predicting no, you did not.
I did.
Not.
You did.
Oh.
Wow, that's
Did you not bring?
extraordinary.
Where's
Yeah.
Mr. Predicto? Did you not pack him in the suitcase?
I did not pack Mr. Predicto. I did, however, pack a couple I thought more important, honestly, less fragile items in the suitcase. One of which is, of course, the Joe Biden finger puppet.
You brought Joe. Okay.
Yeah, Joe is he's a little droopy, but that's the Joe Biden finger puppet. And of course, because this leads us into a major story today, the Kamala Harris finger puppet. So that's yeah. Thank you. And Kamala is feeling it because Kamala is up in the polls at least. And I have a couple of thoughts on this, and I'll share the poll numbers with you. But Kamala Harris has to feel essentially pretty good about things. I mean, that would be the, yeah. And then, of course,
I want to see Courtney's face when she looks inside your suitcase. Like, what are you doing? Why are the finger puppets in here?
well, I mean, these are important finger puppets, and I'm not surprised that that you don't get it, Kim, because it's just not landing on your frequency. But this is the big 3. You've got Biden, you've got Kamala Harris, and of course, angry Beethoven is there with them both. And the angry Beethoven I brought because Kim has kids who are musically inclined. So this is really, the angry Beethoven is really all about you, Kim.
Oh, is that so? Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't bring Angry Beethoven for any other reason than Kim. And of course, he's angry because he's
looks
going
pretty
deaf.
angry.
Yeah. Who wouldn't be? All right. What was I saying?
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh yes, the polls. Should we get to that? What is that?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's get to it.
Start with the good.
Yeah, start with the good, and it's impressive that in swing state polling, Kamala Harris is now getting what many are saying, and the reason they're saying it is because this is the first real polling that's been done since the debate, a debate bounce. The lead nationwide from the Economist poll tracker has her ahead by 4.5 points, which is not nothing, you know.
Was that a national poll?
That's a national poll. Now, the reason you'd look at a national poll at all, obviously it's not critical when it comes to the Electoral College. That's really how things are decided. But the reason you'd look at a national poll is because of, and this is the thing I really would underscore when it comes to all polls, you look at trends. Polls, I think, you know, we've all heard it. Well, they're a snapshot of a moment. You can't put too much stock in them. The way they do polls is outdated, even as they've tried to, you know, bring them up to speed. A lot of that is true. Maybe all of it is true. But what I would say is that you can look at trends in polls, and you can see that in trends, Kamala Harris continues with strength. And that may offer us clues as to how this election may go. Now, again, these polls are sliced and diced a million different ways. The YouGov poll after her debate reported that 50% of debate watchers thought she won. 25% thought Trump won. ABC scored at 58-36 for Harris. That was just a poll about who won the debate. That doesn't tell you what anybody's going to vote for. They got a huge financial boost, the Harris campaign did. But the way these polls are coming down show that Harris is improving by 4 points while Trump remains steady. So of 12 fully pre- and post polls, Harris has improved her share by 1.2 points on average. Trump has worsened his lead by 0.3%. So the margin has moved, if you want to think of it that way, by 1.5 points in Harris's direction. And the views of Harris, this is the general disposition toward Harris in these polling results, they keep improving. So before Biden dropped out, her net favorability rating was minus 17 points. This week, according to 538's poll aggregator, positive views of her equaled negative ones for the first time since mid-2021. Mr. Trump, by contrast, he's there on the right of your screen, he's at a minus 10. So the good post-debate news for Harris comes not without some cautions. You know, again, a lot of this is popular vote, general polling, and that's not how our elections are decided. And state-level polling, I'd say the best state-level polling still has everything at a dead heat, and the really best state-level polling is done by who? It's done by the campaigns. Mm-hmm. If you want to see real money thrown at a poll, you need to really get into the campaigns themselves. Oftentimes, when you see a media poll, it's not that they don't try to make it accurate. It's just that the resources that are directed toward those polls can oftentimes in no way match the resources that are directed by the campaign. None of this matters, says Randy. I love anything that starts with none of this matters. I mean, it really is wonderful. Yes. Nihilistic view of the world. None of this matters. It's all gone. The whole, where are we going with none of this matters? I haven't read it yet. None of this matters. Hillary was essentially a sure thing in 2016, lost. Gosh, is this, I'm going to have to find out like this that Hillary lost, wow. I mean, you couldn't warm me up. And it's been a mess since then, says Randy. Randy, with more good news. Thank you.
It's never been anything like this.
Of course, you're right on some level, Randy, which you always, Randy is always right on some level. That's what I would tell you. So, yes, there can be big surprises, but I would say polling shifts and trends do suggest an increased favorability rating and an increased support for Kamala Harris. Now, you can say, as Randy just has said, and cite, as Randy just has cited, the Hillary Clinton scenario. Hillary Clinton's trends were not what Kamala Harris's are. Her overall rating was, that is to say, the polls of likely voters were in the same space. So I don't dispute that, Randy. But what I would say is that the trends, and this is why I wanted to share this stuff with you, the trend lines clearly favor Kamala Harris in a way that Hillary was not favored. None of this matters. We're all going to be dead eventually anyway. Thank you from Trevor. And let's just hope we can get some drops in before that, right? I mean, it's just...
I wish I had his accent.
Yeah, there you go.
And this is
Trevor
another
with more
poll
good news.
Another poll I know that we were looking at is the swing state poll, and Egolf says Harris is up 5% in Michigan and Philadelphia in yesterday's Quinnipiac poll.
Yes. I have that in our rundown. I'm looking for it now. It's very hard for me to locate on location here. I don't quite have the assets that I have in the main studio. But
as you look for that, I'll read this comment, which, Americans expect this now. Jose says, the Supreme Court will decide. We don't need to worry about it. They'll fix it in the end. So, it's the way our elections go anyway. Why bother voting?
Sadly,
People don't leave my rallies.
Yeah, it's true. It's true that the Supreme Court is the way we decide.
We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
Right. The rallies, of course, between the rallies and the Supreme Court.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
Election day less than 2 months away. Trump and Harris are campaigning in swing states, hoping to win over undecided voters, which is, again, this weird, I don't know, show me 5 families that haven't decided. Although I have heard and seen, and I'm sure you have as well, all of these people who go, I just can't make up my mind. I saw an interview with someone, it was a woman who said that she had all these concerns, and essentially Kamala Harris had addressed all of her concerns, but she said, I'm just not sure I can trust her to actually enact. I'm thinking, wow, really? And then she said, I'm leaning toward Trump. So essentially, she'd already decided she was going to vote for Trump. Harris had actually addressed the things she was worried about. Even, in a list of priorities, you can say, well, I'm not seeing enough in the way of specifics. I think that's something that, as I've suggested, it's the hook on which you hang any kind of objection, just generally, right? Oh, I'm just not seeing enough specifics, so I'm going to go for Trump, whatever. So that's essentially what she was saying. And I thought, wow, it just exposes you as a Trump voter looking for an excuse to state your support of Trump. But anyway, they put her in this category of those who are undecided. So
That was really good. Alan says, breaking news. This is the most optimistic I have ever heard Mark sound about this election.
Look, people don't come to me for optimism. They come for realism. So Harris got a boost in her polling numbers after the debate. And the Quinnipiac Battleground Survey, which was released yesterday from Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, does have some positives. Those states have voted similarly in recent presidential elections, as noted. And this is probably the path to victory for Kamala Harris, right? We've talked about this for months and months, even for when we were talking about Joe Biden. So Harris, in the 538 poll, is favored to win 226 electoral college votes. Trump favored to win 219. If Harris carries the 3 states in that Quinnipiac poll, she would win the 270 electoral college votes needed to secure victory. Now, this poll, again, is finding Harris leading Trump in each of those 3 states. She led Trump by 6 points in Pennsylvania, 51% to 45%, 5 in Michigan, 50% to 45%, and 1 in Wisconsin, 48% to 47%. All 3 states have been solid for Democrats going blue in every election since 1992, except for when they backed Trump in 2016. So separate polling from the New York Times that was released today also supported Harris's lead in Pennsylvania, showing Harris leading Trump by 4 points, 50 to 46. The Times also found the race a dead heat nationally, which is sort of interesting because, in essence, we've been looking at the swing state polls that have all been a dead heat, and nationally, Harris has been leading by a few points, as you're aware. So this is odd that the New York Times aggregator is saying we see the general polling nationwide as a dead heat, but we see in the swing states a 4-point lead from Harris. The Quinnipiac poll also asked respondents to weigh in on which candidate they believe would be better on key issues, including the economy, immigration, abortion, and preserving the democracy of the United States. Isn't it wild that we have to ask which candidate would be better at preserving the democracy of the United States? I promise you they weren't asking that question in 1990, or 1992.
I mean,
the result, go
when
ahead.
you talk about a presidential election and presidential candidates, that should be a given. I mean, we shouldn't even have to ask that question. They have to stand on a stage and promise to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution is the United States. So to have to ask if a presidential candidate is a supporter of the Constitution, would protect the Constitution, is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's. I agree. I mean, it's one thing to have it built into the boilerplate of your the oath that you take. I get it. It's boilerplate. I mean, Trump takes that oath. Any public figure takes the oath associated with the legislature in the House and in the Senate. Judges take the oath. All these different oaths. Sheriffs take it. Cops take it. These oaths, right? The oaths mean nothing. I mean, it's pro forma. It's just one more thing that's done. Yeah, But the idea that you would poll on it is even a level of crazy, which we have reached in America. I mean, there was a legitimate coup attempt, and that is why they asked this question. And by the way, the guy behind the coup attempt is running for president again. I mean, it is utter insanity. We have 4 years of evidence with Trump. Who has to ask? There you go, says Katie. Right. God bless America. The end, says Jim Slayton. Wow. Yeah. God bless America. Right.
I blame you.
No. I'm just looking. People from S-hole countries looking at USA as crazy, says No Contendo. Yeah, that's so right. Thank you for the $2 super chat. It is true that there is a quality of the U.S. that we've never had before, which is third world. Again, one of the real shining lights of American democracy, to call it that, republic, representative democracy might be a way to put it, is the transfer of power. I mean, it really is something that is held out as that which has distinguished us from many other nations. Now, I have to say this, because we have this myth of American exceptionalism in every way. And I'm sorry, I didn't see the Louise thing. I saw it up there for a second, but I was just in the middle of a thought. Yeah. I read the No Contendo. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Who is producing this show? I don't have that drop with me.
Well, I mean, you were still talking about what No Contendo had to say, so I thought it was more applicable to keep that one there.
Oh, okay.
I blame you.
Okay, there you go. You're right, Kim. I'm sorry. So really, I apologize. Albert, do you have an apology? Anyway.
I'd like to apologize to the Mark Thompson Show community.
I think that,
and I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American
community that might be offended. Louis says, if the economy is your thing, thank you for the $5 super chat. If the economy is your thing, equals Trump Airlines, Trump University, Trump Soho, vodka, steaks, ties, casinos, etc., all bankrupt, equals you are whack if you vote for the draft dodger. Okay, well.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah, one of them was not from Luis, though. In any case, what I was going to say is we have this myth of American exceptionalism, which is somehow that our transfer of power, which is generally seamless, the candidate and the party that loses gracefully and graciously turns over power to the team and to the people who have won. There are even, as you know, budgets that are not insignificant that are dedicated to that transfer of power. There are transition teams that are put in place, and those transition teams are there to facilitate a smooth running of the republic while the transfer is going on. So they put money, they put manpower, they put resources into that. Now, we're not the only country on earth that does that. I mean, you can go across the world and find many others that also have a smooth running in that way. So I would suggest to you that what we've seen with the J6 situation was something that really threw us into another category completely, where all of a sudden there would be no transition. And as you know, Trump's people didn't aid in the transition. There are two weird things about the Trump administration. The first is that they didn't think they were going to win, as you know. I've mentioned the book to you before. I would recommend it to you still, the Michael Lewis book. I think it's called The Fifth Estate. The idea somehow that there were those resources, those assets, as I've just suggested, directed toward a transfer of power to help along from Obama to Trump, the new administration. And they were, there it is, the fifth risk, thank you. And what he discusses there is the fact that there was no one home. There was no effort made to really produce the kind of meetings, the kind of systems and strategies from the Trump people designed to meet the meeting systems and strategies that were already set up by the Obama people to bring them into power with a transition that would then be smooth. Who's going to run the USDA? Who's going to help with those things that the government is charged with doing, protecting the public in many different ways? These are things you have to be read in on. You have to be brought up to speed on. There was no one. When I say no one, I mean literally. No one attended the meetings that were set up to transfer and transition the new administration. Well, then Trump comes to power, right? So it's all a mess. They assign some of these major institutions of government that are charged with protecting the public safety, like the USDA. It inspects your meat. It inspects a bunch of stuff that is related to your health. They had no one to run it. The Trump people. They just didn't expect it. Once they got things going, he gave it to lobbyists, he gave it to his friends, he gave it to people who were big donors, as you're aware. And then at the end of his administration, what does he do? He attempts to hang on to power through an illegal coup, through substituting in the government everybody he could to try to maintain power, and then ultimately by violent takeover. So when we talk about Trump and protecting democracy and that question that's on the poll, who do you trust better to maintain the U.S. democracy? It all of a sudden takes on a context of reality that we just have never had to confront in this country before. No. It's utterly absurd, but it's a reality. So, looking at the chat, and then I have something to talk about with the chat real quick. I just wanted to bring everybody up. Anyway, I will just mention something that Kim mentioned to me the other day, which is pretty interesting. And I just have to get, I don't know, I have to get up to speed on it because I haven't really been able to check it out any kind of way. And it's
The Mark Thompson Show.
Apparently there is a Facebook group that has formed around the show, because I always feel like one of the we came from a talk radio show. We were a very successful talk radio show on a radio station called KGO Radio. They were in San Francisco, and things were pumping. We had a good audience. We had a lot of fun. We talked about serious topics. We also had all kinds of stuff that we just love doing on radio. So that station was owned by a communications conglomerate, right? They own a bunch of different stations, and we're just one more station. There's no local ownership of that station. This happens in cities across America, and they're in San Francisco with just one more line item on their list of assets. They got rid of the station completely. This is a station with a storied history. And as I say, with a robust audience. Look at how many people come to this show. We're completely supported by those people. Literally, this show stays on because of the PBS NPR model. People who step up and go, hey, I enjoy the show, I get something out of it, and as a result, I'm going to support it and make sure that they can meet payroll every month. And they go to our Patreon and PayPal pages, and there are links to both of them under all of our videos, and they support us. But to the point, we came over here, and we're struggling to get going, and there we are. Now we're on YouTube, we're across major podcast platforms, we're on iHeartRadio, we're in all of these different places. But the way that you see the show or interact with the show really is on YouTube primarily, and we now have this community of people who are now with us on YouTube. So that's to put it in context, because apparently from that community of people, and I think that's one of the great assets of coming here, is we have this community of people. They have gone to Facebook to continue the conversation that they start on this show. So again, I don't know if they talk politics. I don't know if they just talk socially. I don't know if they're planning get-togethers, whatever, but it's very cool that this group has this subgroup, if you want to think of it, and they meet on Facebook. Now, what is the name of the group that meets on Facebook, Kim?
The group is the Mark Thompson Show fan discussion page. So if you type in Mark Thompson Show fan discussion, you'll be able to find it that way on Facebook.
I see. Okay. Well,
there's
that's
also,
cool.
by the way, the Mark Thompson Show Facebook page. So there's both.
Yeah, and I don't know how to reach either of them.
Put that
Isn't that
coffee down.
Maybe it's the problem. I've been too much the coffee. By the way, I do miss my Coachella Valley coffee. I'm drinking something that was just left on the counter here at Mom's house when she moved out.
That's a bummer. I feel bad for you.
Well,
although it looks like the coffee cup you have at home without the sticker.
It does. Well, this is because I bought 2 of these cups because I didn't want to use Mom's cups anymore. And
Why?
So
what's wrong with the cups at your house?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into a big thing, but they're micro cracks. Mom has kept them since, some of these cups have been around since 1983. I mean, there really is. It's a walk through time here in Mom's house. So
They're
she's
all stained
moved.
and raggedy, or what?
Not stained and raggedy, just cracked, like those mini cracks in ceramics.
And
not
chipped.
good for you. Yeah, chips. So yet this cup was made in China, probably. So I mean, I'm sure I'm drinking some carcinogen, right now. By the way,
a little lead with your coffee.
What's that? A little exactly. A little lead with your coffee. Mark, how dare you have a red cup? Says Mars. Are you a conservative? Don't you support democracy and Kamala? How dare you? Yeah, exactly. I'm going to have a big bonfire, and I'll throw everything red in it. I was thinking this. No, I actually love my red cup. It stands out in a crowd of cup holders. I came in on the train, and a lot of people coming to Washington, D.C. are wearing hats. Albert, you'll be able to weigh in on this because you're the commissioner of sports on this show. And they support the Washington baseball team, the Washington Nationals. What color are the hats that the Nationals wear, Albert?
Oh, no.
Do you know the answer to that?
This is asking off the top of my head type of thing. I believe they wear either navy blue or red.
It has to be red.
It has to be red, Albert. Why would I talk about red in the context of this whole red conversation?
Well, sports nowadays, they have so many different uniforms and so many different types, and they even have like this cherry blossom uniform. I'm confused. Basketball is probably the worst. I don't know who's playing.
But this means you can't tell the difference between a Washington Nationals fan and a Trump supporter.
Thank you. Don't overthink it, Albert. It was a simple question about the. You knew, in this case, the commissioner knew too much to be able to answer the question simply. Yeah. But indeed, they were wearing red hats, and I thought, oh my God, look at all these Trump supporters. Nope. Well, there they are with blue hats. So instantly, Albert makes me a liar. So
it's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
I guess.
Do you have
feel
an apology
now.
for Albert, perhaps?
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Well, Albert is part of the Asian community, so I do apologize.
But then, like I said, there's just so many.
Well, do you want to put up a picture of them with the red hats? Yeah, because the uniforms are usually red. So how dare you try to show me up?
My bad. I'm sorry.
We can both be right. There's a world where we could both be right, Mark.
Yes, thank you very much, Albert. That's the world I want to be in. So
that's not fake. That's real.
I'd like to continue this conversation. I have a lot of other stuff to get to. We have David Katz, the brilliant former federal prosecutor I mentioned at the top of the show. He joins us to kick off the second hour. We gave you the swing state polling, which does now. I'm pausing. I want to say oddly because I feel as though these polls are frozen, really. But now they are continuing to show a trend line, I would say, modest as it may be, toward Kamala Harris. Before I get to anything else, I want to get to that Sean Fain thing because it's interesting to me that the union head is in this weird place because the Democrats, typically friends of the union, and these two candidates, there is, I think, no comparison. I mean, Trump is obviously an anti-unionist. He celebrated Elon Musk firing 7,000 workers who were just talking about joining a union. I mean, how can you not see the choice here if you're a union member as stark and clear?
Makes
but somehow, what do you have? You've got don't you have video with Sean Fain on MS? Here's a quick. I haven't seen this yet, but let's take a look.
Said something in an interview with Elon Musk on Twitter that is the kind of thing that you would expect.
By the way, stop for a second. That was not an interview with Donald Trump with Elon Musk. That is the mischaracterization of this. I don't mean to stop, but I do want to be clear about this because this was a big thing with Kamala Harris. Well, Donald Trump sat down with Elon Musk and he had a 2-hour conversation. No, that was a conversation. It was not an interview. Elon Musk started the whole thing by saying, I've supported you and I continue to support you. I'm giving you money and my platform, and I'll continue to say it everywhere I can. I think you're the best thing for the future of this country. I think if Kamala Harris wins, blah, 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 all this negative stuff. So there is no interviewer in the world at any network, or even if you think they have a liberal lean, that would ever start a conversation/interview by lavishing that kind of praise on the interview subject. It's absurd. So I right away wouldn't call the interview that Elon Musk had with Trump an interview. Sorry to pause it. I won't pause it again until the next time I pause it.
So just recorded audio. It's about firing strikers, and I just want to listen to that. Let's listen to that now.
I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say,
"Oh, here it is."
You want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike, and you say, "That's okay. You're all gone. You're all gone." So every one of you is gone.
So there he is cheering on firing striking workers, and yet today the Teamsters Union decided that they couldn't decide who to endorse in this presidential campaign. You didn't have any struggle with that question.
No, I mean, it's a real simple equation for us. It's a real simple question to answer for us. I mean, this is a which side or whose side are you on moment for working class people in this country. And it's very clear, where Donald Trump stands and where Kamala Harris stands. Let's talk about Donald Trump. He was president. Where the hell was he and what did he do when he was president, when factories were closing and workers were being left behind? He was missing in action. He did nothing to stop it. And, where's all the manufacturing jobs and the industrial plan that Donald Trump enacted when he was president? I'll give you a clue. There wasn't one. But, we look at Kamala Harris and the body of work of the Harris and the Biden administration. I mean, after they dealt with the wreckage of the mess of Trump's failure to act during a pandemic, they came up with the American Rescue Plan, which saved hundreds of thousands of pensions. They came up with the Industrial Recovery Act, Inflation Recovery Act, Inflation Reduction Act, and also the CHIPS Act. And, they actually came up with an industrial plan. As we speak, there are over 30 plants, manufacturing plants in the United States that are being planned, that have been built, or are being built. And that's the biggest industrial plan we've ever seen in my lifetime. And so, it just goes back to that. Trump is all talk, and Kamala Harris has done the work. And so we know who stands with us. And, you look at the Teamster situation, I don't speak for their leadership, but, we've done the numbers going back to 2008. And when you look at union households and working class people, it's been very consistent, with unions, union workers. 65% typically vote Democrat, 30 to 32%, vote Republican. And, when you look at all the Teamster councils that came out today endorsing Harris and Walz, you look at, in Michigan, 245,000 active and retired workers have endorsed Harris and Walz. You look at Nevada, that council out there, I think it was Council 42, 300,000 members endorsed Harris and Walz. You look at New York, the largest local, endorsed Harris Walz. You look at Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania Council, Central Pennsylvania Council, Philadelphia, they all endorsed Harris and Walz. So I believe their numbers are really accurate with the UAW and where we stand. And, we just got to do the work, and I believe that's going to happen. Working class people are tired of being left behind, and Donald Trump is not the answer to our problems.
Well, that's thank you. That was a great piece of video. And I think the thing that he ended with is worth a quick 20 seconds on, and that is when Trump ran the first time, that which he speaks of, which is American workers are tired of getting left behind, that resonated for Trump because he was an outsider. But now what Fain is saying is we've lived through 4 years of Trump, and we know that he has no agenda for the American worker. He's a BS artist, and factories closed, and he did nothing. And he even celebrated the firing of striking workers. So I thought from a substantive standpoint, he really got to the clear difference at the end of his run. Now, what he's also saying is union workers, in large measure, support Donald Trump. But the United Auto Workers, where do they stand? They're still with no endorsement. Isn't that right?
The UAW? I thought they already endorsed Harris.
And what is the Teamsters? I'm thinking of the Teamsters. Sorry.
The Teamsters decided nationally that they would not endorse either candidate.
Right. Thank you. I'm sorry.
There are local boards of the Teamsters, like the Teamsters West Coast. They've endorsed Kamala Harris.
Right.
And as Sean Fain was talking about, there are, on the East Coast, there are other Teamsters boards that have endorsed Kamala Harris. But nationally, they've decided to not endorse anyone.
Yeah, there it is, the Teamsters. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, it's interesting. The projection, I would just suggest, of machismo and of toughness is something that it's the only way I can really square where the Teamsters lean on this. Otherwise, I don't quite get what about the Trump dance sparks to them, But because there just really isn't any kind of legit foundation for them to back Trump when it comes to organized labor. No Contendo with a $5 super chat as always. Thank you. He's really active. No Contendo is, or he or she. I don't know. Secretary of Labor under Biden, Marty Walsh. Yeah, Marty Walsh is a real union guy. Under 45, Carl Jr. CEO, minimum wage, anti-union, Teamsters acting crazy. Yeah, Secretary of Labor under Biden and under Trump. You only need to do a quick pass over the cabinet positions that were associated with the Trump administration and those of the Biden administration, and you can get a total sense of where the two guys are in terms of their general lean. A lot of Teamster white males with high school education or less that live in very rural areas, so basically the same demographic as Trump supporters, says John. Yeah, I don't know if you're describing Teamsters when you a lot of Teamster white males. You're saying with high school, maybe, yeah. I mean, but I think even so. I mean, I'm struggling to see what they really see in Trump. Although what I think the answer may be is something related to what I was alluding to, which is sort of this machismo. You know what I mean? Trump talks tough, and sometimes that does work. You know, and he others the others in a big way. You know, those people that are ruining your life would be better if it weren't for those people there. And that's a big part of the Trump, J.D. Vance world. To be fair, 45 made sure to keep the meatpacking factories open as the workers were dropping dead. Exactly, Donna. And those, as you know, thank you for reminding us, that was at the beginning of the pandemic. Trump forced those workers back into what were then termed, what was the term, Kim? It was like, it was essentially imperative positions. That is to say, an imperative business.
Oh, essential workers.
Thank you, essential workers. I wish I had something for you.
I'll take the angry Beethoven puppet.
The angry Beethoven puppet is here for you too. Angry Beethoven was still very impressed with your knowing that. Essential workers. So you've deemed those who work in slaughterhouses essential workers, meat packing plants, same thing. You force them to work. A lot of them are illegal, meaning in the country illegally. Okay, we'll just put it that way. I don't know what the political correct way to put it is, but one of the reasons that's important is that you can abuse them, you can threaten them, you can fire them without any repercussions. You can't do that with a U.S. citizen. And those meatpacking plants became cauldrons of disease. And it is true, whoever it was, I forget now, who made that point, that Trump essentially forced those people back in without any new safety protocols when it came to COVID and the transmission of COVID. It is a remarkable and embarrassingly awful track record that the Trump administration had with workers in this country. And yet he continues to make this populist play. But if anybody actually looks at his 4 years, sorry, he just didn't. I'd love to be able to say, well, it's a complicated picture. Sometimes he was for workers, sometimes, I really would. He made promises to workers. We're going to build factories. He made all kinds of promises to working class America, and he didn't keep any of them.
Jim says, Trump is a moderate and pro-working class. We need him so bad.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the lie.
Yeah.
But, if you consider working class the billionaire class, the donor class, then yeah, that's who he represents. Tax cuts for the super rich, and he paid that with money we didn't have, right? So that debt, which he doubled, he paid for these tax cuts with all that money. That's why the debt went up so much. So, don't mean to be an anti-Trumper, just telling it straight. And I do think, last point was something a lot of truckers listen to right-wing radio or something. I just caught a bit of it. There is a media ecosystem in this country that's important, and it's important not to ignore it. We came out of, as I told you, an environment that was radio. We were a radio show. We were one of the, I would consider us centrist left radio shows in America, one of the only ones. We're going to have Tom Hartman on, I think in another couple of weeks, and he has another one. And there are other, Stephanie Miller. I don't mean to say that they didn't exist and don't exist, but they are a minority. Most radio stations that are talk radio are right-leaning. And you're lucky if it's only sort of a right lean. You find out the Mark Levins and the Sean Hannitys of the world, they're on really right-wing radio stations, and those people are energized to vote. They're generally older people who are energized to vote. So that media ecosystem is real. And the Fox News Channel power, that's real too. So as we talk about these issues and how they filter down to working class America and those who feel that their part in America is no longer recognized, I think you have to look at that messaging that is essentially being carried out by that right-wing ecosystem that I'm talking about. So smash it like a boss.
With your iron rod.
Smash that like button.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah, we ask you to smash the like button. It helps in some weird YouTube algorithm that I don't understand. So what can I say? Please do it. It helps us, and it costs you nothing. So
we have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
Yeah, okay. Here we go.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
We are finishing up in minutes our first hour. And in the second hour, I'm going to have to leave you. I'm going to turn it over to Kim with David Katz. I have to go spend more time with Mama. But I'm excited about finishing the show strong, the first hour strong. Mm-hmm. And it's, I did have some other video, I thought, Albert. Did we, was it about the crypto venture that the Trumps are now involved in?
I have a couple of them. I have one that we have footage of the actual said person for the business guy, if you want to do that.
Oh, yes. Okay. So Trump's, I'm wondering which one we should run first. The first is a Bloomberg News report on the crypto announcement. The crypto announcement is, it's so, again, sorry, Trump supporters, but it's Trumpian in that it's disorganized. It looks sketchy at best, and it looks like a scam. Looks like a total ripoff. It feels like Trump University. You've got people in charge who have been associated with, shall we say, a checkered history. Play me the Bloomberg thing first. This will give me the overview, and then we'll play you the actual statement video of the guy who is running this entire new Trump crypto venture. Go ahead, Albert.
Tell us about last night. What was it? A Twitter Spaces where Donald Trump teamed up with some of his kids. Barron wasn't there. And an interesting figure in the world of crypto.
Yeah, so this was billed as like the moment we'd all learn about World Liberty Financial. Trump's been promoting it on Twitter. Don Jr. and Eric, they've been saying this is going to make finance great again, but they haven't really said exactly what it is. And spoiler alert, even after 2 hours of talking, they didn't quite say last night either. But they did bring out some of their business partners, the guys who seem to have gotten in the Trump son's ear about starting their own crypto venture. One of them, I thought his resume was particularly interesting. His name's Chase Hero, and he calls himself in videos on YouTube the dirtbag of the internet. So I was pretty surprised to see him called up on stage with the Trumps last night.
So what has Chase Hero done in the past? What brings him to this moment and meeting with the Trump family?
So he started off as a weed dealer, went to prison, got out, became an internet marketer where he sold things like colon cleanses. Most recently, he's had a $149 a month get-rich-quick class, and he got into crypto. He had a DeFi platform that wasn't particularly successful. He's not like a famous guy in crypto.
Stop for a second, Albert. I want to go back. It's $190 to get rich. I want to go back to that because I want to get rich quick. It's only $190 a month to get rich quick.
Cheap cleanses. Most
the only
recently, he's
problem
had
is
149.
that. Oh, it's 140. And the only problem is that the get rich quick part is what he's doing. He's not getting you rich quick. He's getting rich quick on your $149 a month. Go ahead, Albert, please.
$1 a month get rich quick class, and he got into crypto. He had a DeFi platform that wasn't particularly successful. He's not like a famous guy in crypto, but through a real estate developer who's friends with Trump, he got to meet the Trumps. And last night, he and the Trump sons talked about how they get together a lot. They talk about crypto. He's been teaching them how to use DeFi. And the Trump sons apparently wanted to start their own platform. I mean, and it's pretty wild. Like, there's not that many days until the election, and Trump is spending his Monday night promoting like a new for-profit venture.
Yeah, well, you got to make the money, right? Apparently, Barron Trump doesn't need to be taught about DeFi, right? He's their chief DeFi scientist. What is his title?
Yes. So I've seen a draft white paper for the project. He's listed as chief DeFi visionary. He's 18 years old.
Visionary.
He just started his freshman year at NYU. It seemed like they were hoping he'd show up for the spaces last night, but maybe he had an early class this morning, so he didn't call in.
I see. So Barron wasn't there, but Don Jr. and Eric were there. Was Chase Hero also on the X call?
Yeah, Chase was there. He didn't give too many details, but they seemed to be aware of our story, pointing out his resume. They talked a little bit about like the fake news. And Don Jr. said about Chase, this is like one of the smartest guys I've met. And he said that if you brought him into a boardroom at Goldman Sachs, he'd blow everybody there away, which was pretty wild to hear.
Only he would never be allowed into a board meeting at Goldman Sachs. That's the problem. But if you could get him in somehow, like in a disguise, he would blow everybody away. They'd be blown away because they'd wonder, how the F did this guy get in here? He is so completely full of S.
They're talking about the same guy that was selling colon cleanses before this, right?
Well, colon cleanses, get rich, and also he'd serve time for dealing weed. Here he is. We have a piece of video on him. He was played down on MS. Go ahead.
Hero, Trump's business partner. Please listen.
You can literally sell in a can, wrapped in piss, covered in human skin for $1 billion if the story's right. Because people will buy it, and that is what is going on in the crypto space. And like I said by the video, I'm not going to question the right and wrong of all that. All I'm saying is, as a human being, you have the ability to make a ton of money right now.
Wow, that's
Trump's
great.
right.
Well, that's good. It's always good to know that you've got the chance to win an F ton of money to earn it.
Wild idea, but it just might work.
Just by defrauding a few people out of it. Go ahead,
Some
Kim.
people speak with confidence, and so they're taken seriously. I don't understand how you could listen to that and then go, that's the guy I want to lead my crypto company.
Yeah, that was truly revealing. On another level, I would say that was so over the top that it makes the Trump con seem almost credible. You know, I mean, he's part of that new brash, I'm a rebel and let me talk smack to the institutions of finance, the institutions of government. People are sparking to that. It particularly works with younger people. It's like, let me tell you, we've got to take it to government institutions. We've got to take it to financial institutions. It's time to think outside the box. It's time to bring on the rebellion. The rebellion is associated with, again, transactions on the blockchain as opposed to transactions in the traditional banking institutions. So what this Trump thing is, if you can't figure it out yet, I'll just give it to you in 10 seconds or less. Essentially, it's a platform on which you can trade your crypto. So they will get a little piece of every trade. I think that's essentially how they're setting up. It's not so different than, who was the scam artist, Bankman-Fried, right? Who had the, what was the name of his platform? Commish, it's all over, anybody? No one on Sam Bankman-Fried's, his platform? Seriously?
Isn't it FTX?
Thank you,
Yeah.
FTX,
Yeah.
Albert. Very, very well done. Yeah.
FTX.
He's a fast Googler, that Albert.
Yeah, really. Very well done. Gosh, I thought would have done. FTS, okay. FTS or is it FTX?
FTX.
FTX as an
thank you.
X-ray, yes.
Thank you very much. So anyway, that's the latest on the latest venture. I mean, if you can't make some money in some way, the Trumps view everything as a money-making venture. And by the way, even if it was a legit money-making venture, it would be still sketchy because you're supposed to be involved in what is a general walk toward public service. So public service is generally associated with things that are not designed to line your pockets. They're designed to help others and help the public at large. So even if it were legit, But this doesn't, again, necessarily look as though it is so legit. But, for all we know, it is. It just seems as though there are a lot of people with questionable, less than legit histories who are associated with it. So the last thing I wanted to say before I turn it completely over to Kim, Uncle Scrooge for $5 Super Chat says, as a union sheet metal worker, Local 104, I'm proud to say our local supports the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris. Wow. Well, there's that. Right on. Meanwhile, No Contendo says SEC's been up his A since 2023, and he lost the DJT case. Yeah, the Securities and Exchange Commission, interesting. I don't know all the X's and O's, which is why thank you, No Contendo, which is why I'm pausing a bit. But I do know that questions around the media company continue. It was a company that was birthed in ways that hide exactly who was involved in the initial funding. It was that SPAC thing that we talked about on the show. That said, the market is rallying. I don't know what DJT stock is doing, but these ventures designed to line his pockets do play on who he is. He's always been a marketer. He's always been someone who's been branding himself in trying to work off of that brand. And DJT and the cryptocurrency and selling NFTs and selling sneakers, the assassination sneakers, then the second set of assassination sneakers. I mean, it's all insanity. I mean, it's like one big SNL sketch, only it's real. So it's under $15 a share. I'm seeing in the chat.
$14.92 is what I'm looking at here.
Minute to minute, it's changing. Thank you for that. The last thing I wanted to mention, though, as I was saying, was and is simply related to, and then David Katz is going to come on, and it's going to be a terrific second hour. They'll talk about Sean Diddy Holmes. They'll talk about Donald Trump as well. If someone doesn't vote for Kamala, does that mean they don't support women? Says Mars for $5.
I think this is based on something I said yesterday. When we're hearing about these cases now, because there's a panel in Georgia that investigates maternal outcomes, maternal deaths. And we're now starting to see these cases come out, specifically in Georgia, because they're investigating. This could be happening in other states and we wouldn't know about it. But we're starting to see these cases come out where the lack of care, of reproductive health care, is resulting in the deaths of women. At least 2 that we know of so far. And so yesterday I said, if you don't, there's only one choice for president. There's someone who supports women and reproductive rights and our health, and someone who doesn't. End of story. And so if you don't support Kamala Harris, then it means to me that you don't care about my health or your mother's health or your sister's health or your daughter's health. And there's only one choice. And I'll go to my grave thinking that, Mark. So
Sure. And I think squarely so on one level. Thank you, Mars, for that. Here's the problem with all candidates. Now, in this case, I would say we have a cartoonish choice. I don't need to review over and over again. The Supreme Court is a perfectly fair place to start and end your argument about why you're supporting Kamala Harris. To me, it is clear. And that's kind of what Kim is saying. She's saying, I see what this court did. I see who appointed these justices. I see from what list these justices came, and I see that same guy coming in is going to use that same list to continue to take away women's freedoms in ways that we haven't even really seen or conceived of yet. But for others, they are single issue voters about other things. I don't know what it might be. The Supreme Court is a really, in my judgment, great place to start and finish any argument about who you'll vote for, because as I've said before, and I will reiterate it, I think it must be said over and over, the Supreme Court is the legislative body with muscle in America. Congress can't get anything done anymore. You're not going to see any real substantive legislation that's going to affect American life, except these tax cuts, which they make a priority. It was an insanely big deal that Joe Biden got that infrastructure package through. That's why that was so extraordinary, because it was with such a slim margin. He was able to get through a transformative package on infrastructure. Many of the aspects of that package are huge projects that are going to red states, states that the Democrats will not carry. So even as they demonize the Biden administration, the Democrats, they're benefiting enormously in so many of these red states from that transformative package. But you won't see legislation like that out of a Republican administration. Look at the Trump administration. Look at it. You've got 4 years of evidence. What did they do? Tax cuts and then Supreme Court appointments. And then the Supreme Court rolled back Roe, and they rolled back the Chevron deference case. They took apart, in essence, the Chevron deference is taking apart the ability of the government to protect consumers and to protect the public from corporate polluters, from polluting air, soil, water. It's that simple. That's all they did. And what Kim is saying, and I think it's a perfectly defensible position, is if you care about women's freedoms, there's no way you can vote that crew back in. The Supreme Court already poisoned. They're corrupt to the core. They're corrupt in ways that are associated with taking bribes. But beyond that, they're corrupt philosophically. They present as objective. Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett. What do they say in questions around confirmation? Roe is settled law. Roe is settled law.
Yep.
And what do? What does Gorsuch do? What do they all do? They make their first agenda item rolling back Roe. So they are corrupt in every way. They take bribes, and they're corrupt philosophically. They lie under oath about their intentions, and they continue with that radical right-wing theological agenda. So Kim is right to start and stop at the Supreme Court, but you may have another single issue. Your issue might be the environment. Do you want a crew in there that doesn't give an S about the environment? His big thing is drill, baby, drill. You can think drill, baby, drill, but you have to have some sense for the environment, for, again, protecting the public from corporate polluters. 45 promised a tax cut middle class, and it never happened, says No Contendo. Yeah, put it on the pile of stuff that never happened.
I think that Trump has said he's proud that his Supreme Court, that the decisions that he's made led to the national rollback of Roe v. Wade and reproductive right protections for women. As a result of those decisions that he made and who he put on the court, at least 2 women, and likely many more, have died. His decisions are killing women. That's it.
Well, it's even worse than that, of course. I mean, to me, women should have the choice over what happens with their own body.
Doctors should have the choice that they want to help save a patient. Instead, doctors have to stand back because they'll go to jail and lose their license. So they have to let these women suffer. And by the time it's urgent and that it's considered an emergency and they step in to help, it's too late.
So
thanks, Trump.
Yeah, I mean, that, and it's true that Trump takes credit for it. So in answer to the thing that got us off on this, I would say Kim's not wrong. You can, the way I always try to understand the person who is commenting, and I see how you could blow past that if you're on your way to the other issue you care about. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to double back and look at what Kim's just said and about the Supreme Court. And, you know, pay attention to what David Katz has said about the Supreme Court. He's had some great comments about this activist court along the way. Luis says, have a wonderful visit with Mom. Safe travels. Thank you, Luis. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody with the shout out to my mom, who is really quite the lady. And we miss Dad, but it's great to have time with my mom, and I consider that a real fortunate thing as well. So, Kim, I'm going to leave you with the great David Katz, and again, ask him about P. Diddy.
I will.
What are you kids calling Sean Combs, Albert? Is he P. Diddy or is he Puff Daddy? What is he now?
Probably right now creepy or gross.
He's prisoner number or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that it? I see.
Inmate,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm looking for my my transition. I'll give you a transition. I think I have it here with me, Albert. It's very exciting.
Do we get to see you again tomorrow?
Yes, I will be back tomorrow, everyone.
Okay.
Please hold your applause until tomorrow. Looking forward to it. The great David Katz joins next. And thanks, Kim. Thanks, Albert. Mm-hmm.
Bye, Mark.
Bye,
The Mark
bye.
Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
We continue with the second hour of the Mark Thompson Show. We have Turi Ryder coming up, former KGO talk show host, author. That will be a little later in this hour. But right now, former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney in Southern California, very sought after. You've seen him on TV, or heard him on the radios, seen him in print, internationally, nationally, here every week on the Mark Thompson Show. It's David Katz, everybody. Welcome to the show, David Katz.
Hi, great to be with you, Kim.
Hi. Great to be with you as well. So
Shout
Mark
out
wanted
to Mark's mom. Shout out to Mark's mom, and safe travels back, Mark.
It's nice to see that he's able to go visit and spend time. He wanted me to ask you, and I know you were talking about last night when we were emailing back and forth, P. Diddy, or Sean Diddy Combs, who is charged with some pretty heinous crimes, and possibly because of the nature of them, he's not allowed to leave, maybe because he has a lot of money and maybe a flight risk. I don't know what the reason is, but they're keeping him locked up.
Well, I was a federal prosecutor, so I get the idea of bringing these cases, and I get the idea of bringing them under racketeering. I do want to present what I consider both sides of the story on some of these questions, particularly bearing in mind that we do have a presumption of innocence, and that unpopular people are protected from being dragged into court and punished for things because they're very unpopular at the moment that they're charged, because of due process, because of all the protections that we have. And, just to take an example, Miranda wasn't exactly a saint, but he gave us the Miranda warnings. And so sometimes case law and our constitutional rights, really, that's where the rubber hits the road. And those rights protect all of us, but they get made in cases like P. Diddy's, like in Miranda's, like in some other case. There was a famous Katz who made good law for our civil rights, not related to him at all. And he was a bookie. He used a phone booth, and he had a major case in Fourth Amendment law that protects all of our privacy. So I think it's important to recognize, and we've had these racketeering charges before. Basically, he's charged in 3 counts by a federal grand jury. You hear everything in the world. I heard one of the people who's bringing a civil suit trying to get millions of dollars from Diddy for her client say that, the grand jury looked at this very carefully and the grand jury decided on these 3 charges. Please. I mean, the grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. All the people who said it was a big deal that Trump got indicted by a grand jury, and the ones who say it's a big deal that Diddy got indicted by a grand jury, and they looked at this so carefully. Let me disabuse any of you viewers who believe that. The prosecutors go in there. There's no exculpatory evidence that has to be presented. The Supreme Court has ruled there's no defense side of the story. If the defendant wants to tell his story, he has or she has to do it by him or herself, with the lawyer waiting outside the grand jury room. And so they basically do. That expression, they'll indict a ham sandwich, is because it's one-sided. There are really no checks and balances on it, except the good faith of the prosecutor. The reason that you, me, and everybody's not indicted in this country is the good faith of the prosecutors, not because the grand jury will really hear our side of the story or consider our side of the story before they indict you, me, and anyone else who's watching. Now, we do have a lot of good faith among the prosecutors. I was one. I never indicted anybody. I had the slightest question in my mind that they were guilty, and I tried to look at both sides of it. But I'm saying that law doesn't require that, and I don't think they really looked perhaps at the other side. of the Diddy charges. Now, turning to the charges, he's charged in, I say, 3 counts. And it was an interesting decision. I don't mean to attack, other lawyers' judgment. This was a very tough judgment call, and everything is clear in hindsight, right? But I wonder if it would have been better if he had imposed these home detention conditions, confinement conditions on himself. He knew this charge was coming. There were 2 spectacular raids, you'll remember. One was the one that was supposedly a militaristic. I mean, you can't blame them. They're expecting to find weapons. He's a very rich person. He has a compound. You and I would go in there with flak jackets and everything else, and with a little tank, because we wouldn't want to get shot. We don't want to have to tell our family, hey, we didn't come home tonight, or have someone tell our family we didn't come home tonight. So that's why the police and the federal agents go in like that. And when people say, oh, they militarized it, I don't buy that. But they did a big raid here in LA. They did another big raid of his mansion, that for $48 million mansion in Miami. And when they raided them, they found guns and things like that. The point is that P. Diddy and his lawyers, very expensive lawyers, one of the hugest firms in Los Angeles. If you have the money, it's amazing who you can hire. I think you should always hire a smaller firm like mine, special pleading for smaller criminal defense firms. And
I wouldn't hire anybody but you. Absolutely.
Thank you. And that one is huge mega firms. I just think that these mega firms, when they have somebody like the Pharma Bro, or they have somebody like P. Diddy, and all of your other clients have the same reaction that the public has. A lot of your viewers and listeners are probably thinking, why is David Katz saying anything that helps this P. Diddy? I saw that tape, which, by the way, is over 8 years old. I saw that very annoying, more than annoying, that outrageous, brutal tape of him beating that woman in that hotel corridor. I'm ready to convict the guy right now. Why is Katz saying anything on his behalf at all? But what I'm saying on this particular issue, Kim, is that maybe they should have had him stay in Miami at the compound, hire the guards, have the guards impose the conditions that they said, because they knew this indictment was coming. So my point was to have him go to New York City, to frolic around New York City, and then say, look, I'm ready to post the 48 million. It would have been better, I think, in retrospect. And again, it's different lawyers would handle it different ways. And maybe they told Diddy exactly this, and Diddy wouldn't follow their advice. But he would have gotten a couple of things if he just stuck around in the mansion and imposed those conditions on himself. He could have said they really worked. He didn't have a computer. He didn't have a phone. He didn't tamper with anybody, because and then they could have presented that to the judge. And the other interesting aspect of it is that then he would have had to be taken to the nearest magistrate judge, which means he would have been taken to a magistrate judge in Miami, Florida, where he might have had a better chance of getting released. And if a magistrate judge in Florida had released him and the district judge had allowed him to go with security on a plane, it makes it harder for the New York judge, doesn't it, to then detain him and put him in that hellhole of a prison where he is, the Brooklyn House of Detention over there, the Brooklyn Metropolitan.
I'm told that this is a bad place. Like, this is a place where it's kind of squalid and there's a lot of violence. Like, this is a bad scene.
I had a client there. It's called the Eastern District of New York, and he only spent a night or two there, and then I got him released on bail. But yes, it's a squalid, awful place. You might wonder why this country, with all of its wealth and the money that we spend on things, don't have decent federal detention facilities. But this one is particularly egregious, this one. It does have quite a blue ribbon or red carpet, to be sarcastic. It's had more famous people than a lot of, El Chapo, I think, was there at least for a while. The Pharma Bro that I mentioned was there. Epstein was not there. Epstein, as the cynics say, who was suicided. He was suicided at a jail in New York, which I've also visited for a client. Also not a nice place at all. But they closed that place down after Epstein committed suicide there. And the other thing I want to say about this prison where he's going to be held for detention, here's the main point that I wanted to make about due process. He has a right to defend himself, no matter what people think of him, no matter what their initial reaction is to the charge. He has a right to defend himself, and that's awfully hard to do. We claim there's a presumption of innocence. We claim that we believe that 10 guilty people should go free rather than one innocent person go to jail. And the way we give those principles, what we would say are values, the way that we really respect our values and what we believe about the dignity of people and the fairness of the system is we give them a fair chance to go to trial. And he's so far behind the 8 ball being kept, not just because it's an awful place, but he's notorious, he's famous. So as a practical matter, he's going to be in solitary confinement because they can't take the risk that some other prisoner attacks him or some problem like that happens. So he's in solitary confinement. In terms of meeting with his attorneys, it's so much worse than the conditions to meet with a client. I mean, I have a client right now, federal case, who's detained. And that alone is a problem. You have to go at certain hours. There's a count when you can't be there. You can't really set up shop, of course. You have to make sure your client has a computer and access to a computer. And all of those things that help you to prepare, he could do much better at his home. Now, people say, oh my God, you mean while he's waiting a trial, he gets to live in his mansion? Well, I mean, if you want to have class warfare all the time with our criminal justice system, I guess you can take a posture of just like class warfare. But there are people like Pharma Bro, like this guy, like some billionaire from China who got charged here and stayed in a fabulous place while he prepared for trial. There are some people who do get acquitted, there are some people who ought to be acquitted, but all of them ought to be allowed to put on their motions and to prepare and to put on their trial. And it just is such an impediment on his preparation for trial. And one more thing, that the discovery in these cases tends to be immense. This issue, if anyone's seen My Cousin Vinny, remember Cousin Vinny? There's something called discovery. Did you look at the file of the discovery? And you have this idea in mind that it's like an old file. It's discovery. Well, discovery now is terabytes of information that you need to access with a computer. And you need to see the visual media, which can be, again, difficult and hard to do. So every reason in the world, and let me just go through them. Flight risk is a reason, okay? He's not fleeing anywhere. He'd have private guards that he would pay out of his pocket, not the taxpayers, but they would be sworn, they'd be like former marshals, former FBI agents. They are not going to let him, run away because he's paying their per diem. He would pay the per diem. They would be very efficient and very sworn and very make sure he does not leave that mansion any which way. All he basically does at the mansion is eat, sleep, and prepare for his trial in a way that's so much fairer to our values and our sense of due process than to keep him in that hellhole where it's so hard to visit him and where he's so restricted. Danger to the community and obstruction of justice. Those have been stated to be kind of the linchpins of why he's being held. And he did apparently very foolishly contact a witness or several witnesses multiple times. Well, it happened. He shouldn't have done it. Let's talk about what's going to happen going forward, because that's the question, whether he gets bail or whether he gets detained there or not. And there are ways. I have another client who's out on bail right now, but he's not allowed to use a computer. The computer can only be used to contact me and to contact medical people. And you can tell every email that he sends, it's either to me or it's to a medical person, or there's an inquiry about it. P. Diddy would also have a guest list. He'd only have like 3 people who are allowed to visit him. And if one of those people the government thought was a co-conspirator, they would fight and tell the judge, no, that person shouldn't be on the guest list of the people allowed to visit him. So you'd restrict his phone calls. People say, how do you do? He has a burner phone, he goes back to jail. He has a phone call that he can't explain to someone who's on the list of people he's approved to call, he goes right back to jail. But yes, he can call his mom. He can maybe call his 3 kids. If they have a suspicion about the 3 kids, no, he can't call the 3 kids. I don't know if they have anything like that.
So why didn't the judge make this decision? Why keep him in jail then? I mean, and I have to say, I have a hard time feeling bad for P. Diddy. I know we're innocent until proven guilty, but it's like, I don't necessarily care that he has to spend a few nights or a month or something in jail, given everything that he's being charged with, which I know doesn't sound good. But why did the judge not do what you're saying?
Almost everyone believes in civil liberties until you get to somebody that they really don't like.
Exactly.
And it's like, for him, for Trump, for this Diddy guy. And we've all seen the beating. The beating, mind you, was over 8 years ago. People should get their heads around it's over 8 years ago. Think of all the people in America who have priors or who, as part of their case, his lawyer said he's got the really bad fortune that the worst thing he ever did in his life, P. Diddy, is on tape. I don't know if it's the worst thing he ever did, but people have done bad things. If people think there's over incarceration, if they think there's way too many people of color in prison, in the criminal justice system, a lot of them are in there for assault, battery, domestic violence, not just men, but women, right? And if you say, oh my God, I've seen that tape, this man should spend 20 years in prison. Well, sure. Just take the tape all by itself and say to yourself, okay, that's the 20-year-old guy who has the bad luck to be on a motel, device. He comes through, he's in a motel, and that's what's on the videotape. Okay. But he's not P. Diddy. He's some 20-year-old guy who's drunk. He's having an episode and he does exactly what he did. Or it's a woman, women beat men and beat other women too. You take all those people, what are there, hundreds of thousands of them in America who get prosecuted, people who've committed assault and battery, people who've committed domestic violence. He didn't knife her. What he did was terribly threw the vase. He did everything that we've seen. But if you think that he ought to get 20 years, then what do you think that the million of people in America with assault and battery, because they're not on tape? I mean, you can visualize that's what assault and battery is. Someone goes to the hospital, right? They've had a vase thrown at them. They've been hit. They have a bruise, 20 years. But that tape, of course, has a huge thing that everybody's considering. I want to say something else, too. He's charged in 3 counts, and the main one is racketeering. And we talked about this in Atlanta, these huge racketeering conspiracies. And I think someone should look at this racketeering law. They charge it in civil cases. I don't think usually racketeering laws add much to what's being charged, except it makes the person look bad. And you can call your civil opponent, or you can call P. Diddy, you're a racketeer, you're a racketeer. But this racketeering, according to the government, stopped 6 years ago. So the span of the racketeering conspiracy, which is what's driving this whole case, stopped in 2016. In other words, this man has not been, even by the government's accusations, a racketeer for over the last 6 years. The thing that he's done that they charge in the indictment is count 3, that he caused women and men to be cross state lines, not minors. Adult women and men to cross state lines for the purpose of prostitution. That's the only thing that he's done in the last 6 years. That's count 3. We had this issue in the pornography business, and they were going to try to prosecute people who made porno flicks because what did they do? They paid people sometimes to cross state lines to make these pornographic movies. Well, wasn't that prostitution? And then the adult industry got together and it wasn't decided that that was not prostitution. But boy, I sure don't see a whole lot of difference from a moral point of view between paying people to come from Nevada to make a porn flick and have sex, and him having people come from Nevada to California to put on these performances for him. So I think there's a lot of things that the defense is going to say. And I think a lot of it is going to be completely, not held to be very important by the public, because they'll see that clip over and over and over again. And that clip is, of course, very disturbing.
No Contendo puts down a $10 super sticker and a question for Mr. Katz. He says many cases against famous people address them only by their stage name. Is that, and many state that this biases those cases. Is that applicable in this situation? Could that possibly be cause for a charge to be thrown out?
It's also insulting. I had a client in the Midwest. I got him acquitted, but he suffered the indignity of being indicted under the name Fat Boy. And of course, there's the ketamine queen. There's controversy now in the Matt Perry overdose death that one of the defendants has been called the ketamine queen. And her attorney has screamed about that. But the government's answer to that is that people who dealt with her and bought ketamine from her, they referred to her as the ketamine queen.
Right.
And so if it's a name that people used for you, the case is not going to be thrown out. The most remedy you could get is you could excise or have the judge redact the name. And young murder, if it's ketamine queen's bad enough, but something that implies in your nickname that you did the crime. If your nickname is Slit Throat and you're charged with slitting someone's throat, you would probably get that excise. But the government argument is that when people say, I only knew the guy as Slit Throat, they don't want the defense attorney to say, you heard about some guy named Slit Throat. You haven't heard about my defendant. You haven't heard about my guy. Right. That was the confusion they were trying to. So if you referred to that way during the criminal acts, that should be allowed to come in so the jury doesn't get confused that there's two different people. The other dude did it, the Slit Throat, the guy that wasn't in the courtroom.
Another comment on the P. Diddy case with the lady Beatrice and a $5 super sticker. She says, I feel if P. Diddy is getting busted for his stuff, Trump should be busted for his. It's only fair. Both are rich, so no claiming that here. And it's interesting that she brings up Trump because I had a question I wanted to ask you. It's something I've been thinking about. I had so many things to talk to you about, and our time is running short. But I wonder if there are two different scenarios come November after the election. In these cases pending against Trump, I know there's a difference between federal cases, which if he wins, he could wipe out. But the state cases, which we've seen in the New York hush money case, that the sentencing has now been delayed. And I wonder if he wins, does that affect the type of sentence he would get, how he's able to serve that sentence? If he loses, is it full steam ahead with all of these cases? What are we expecting?
If he wins both of the federal cases, either he'll self-pardon, which the U.S. Supreme Court presidential immunity case, which I totally disagree with the holding, but I think it suggests that he really could self-pardon. It would seem to me that's one of his executive functions that really can't be I just think it would go into effect. But the more likely way he'd do it is he would pick an attorney general who would say, I've looked into the case, I don't think it has merit, and dismiss it. And there's just really nothing they could do. There's a federal provision which says a judge can keep a case alive even if the prosecutor wants to get rid of it. But it just has no applicability here. If the prosecutor doesn't keep the case going, this is different from like the Judge Cannon thing. Even if Judge Cannon were right, which I don't think she is down in the Southern District of Florida, the remedy would be to simply reappoint Jack Smith in some way. Jack Smith could be treated like an assistant U.S. attorney. I was an assistant U.S. attorney. It's a high rank, but I wasn't appointed by the president. I was an inferior officer. And Jack Smith could be an inferior officer like I was. An inferior officer can be appointed by the attorney general. So the remedy would be the attorney general would turn right around and appoint him. It wouldn't be like if they had let's say Harris won, so the case went on, but there was a Republican Senate. The Republican Senate couldn't monkey around with it, couldn't stop Jack Smith. It would just be handled in a different way. But as to the states, this is a very interesting situation. I've thought about it for a while. He would try to make the life of everybody involved in his New York case in state court and the Atlanta case in state court. He tried to make their life miserable as much as he could. I think Trump, he's already said he's going to be vindictive. He would try to launch tax investigations of them, try to launch all kinds of other investigations into them. As I say, try to make their lives miserable. But there's only so much of that you can do. Some people have said to me when McConnell just would not move on Merrick Garland's nomination and wouldn't move on it. In 10 months, it was all too close to the election. Of course, Barrett's was never too close to the election. But Merrick Garland was way too close to the election to come up before the Senate for a confirmation hearing. And some of my friends said, couldn't Obama make their life miserable in Kentucky? I mean, couldn't he do something like, I don't know, aren't there things, LBJ would have thought of something. LBJ would have thought of some way to make Kentucky's life miserable until McConnell brought it to a vote. And I think in modern times, especially if you're a scrupulous, conscientious president, there's not much you could do. Trump would not be second time around, in my opinion, conscientious, scrupulous. He said he'd be just the opposite. So yes, he tried to make their lives really miserable until the point that they cried uncle and gave up those state prosecutions, or he got a meaningless sentence in one of them.
Before I let you go, I'd like to ask you about the would-be assassin in Florida at the golf course. And I was reading last night about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis trying to say that the gun charges that the feds are starting out with aren't good enough. So now he's directing his officials to launch their own investigation, and that might have legal consequences and not be good for what's happening on the federal level on the investigation and the charges being filed. Can you kind of make heads or tails of that for us?
I think DeSantis is just trying to play politics. And, they have this whole narrative that the FBI, is trying to undermine Trump, and it's so unfair. The same agency that went after Trump is trying to now investigate what happened with this alleged assassination attempt on Trump. And it's all nonsense. I will say it for a million times. The FBI did not go after Trump. The things that Trump did, He got himself in trouble. He brought all of his FBI investigations on himself. As they say, he got investigated by the FBI the old-fashioned way. He earned it. He earned it. And, you know, Mar-a-Lago was just a spectacular thing that you would think nobody would think they could get away with, and the way he obstructed justice and everything else. So that's what brought the FBI on him. But DeSantis is just playing politics, because all he'll do is get in the way of the feds. He doesn't have the state resources. The first time there's a big crime, somebody will say, why are spending state resources on something the FBI and the Secret Service is investigating? Why are you jumping into the middle of this? You guys have nothing to add to this. The FBI labs will test the evidence. They'll prosecute this alleged attempted assassin. And so that's all DeSantis is doing, is trying to play into that narrative. He probably figures by now Trump will lose. He's going to run the next time. He's trying to keep his MAGA contacts intact. DeSantis is, you know, I think Harris is going to win. I said that on one of the shows as the liberal commentator against a real right winger on News Nation. But I think she may win in a romp. I think she's really relating to people. I saw your show yesterday. Your show yesterday, Kim, was wonderful, and the statement from Lawrence O'Donnell was really touching and
very powerful. Mm-hmm.
It is very powerful. People are you know, the story that women are bleeding out because they can't get a procedure that they could get before Roe v. Wade. George W. Bush, as he said, George W. Bush, W is not the hero of this story. George W. Bush and Trump appointed judges, and they, you know, changed the laws in ways the doctors and nurses are now so scared to help women in these life-threatening situations that here's this poor lady in Georgia who bled out, leaving behind a 6-year-old son.
And a second one now, because we know from this Georgia panel that investigates maternal deaths, a second one died, same reason, lack of abortion care, found dead in her bed with her 3-year-old daughter clinging to her. I mean, and these are just the ones we know of. And my fear is that if the Republicans are successful in November, they'll somehow try to do away with this panel in the state of Georgia that investigates this. And so we won't hear about these cases, because we know if there are 2 cases or more in Georgia, there must be cases around the country where women are dying because of this. I don't know if there's a legal ramification or not. If women could sue the government for these deaths, if there could be some class action suit, what legal remedy could there possibly be?
Well, the first thing, women should turn out in the swing states and
100%.
vote in droves, because this was all brought to us by Trump. Trump wanted to brag that he put these 3 Supreme Court justices on there. You know, he could have gone ahead with Merrick Garland. What an amazing way for him to start out and really be a uniter. Instead, he put Gorsuch, who's one of the worst on all of these issues. Then he put 2 more on there, and they have 6 votes. You know, there were a lot of controversy about Chief Justice Roberts and how he steered some of these cases. And I just thought, this is kind of a nothing burger. He had 6 votes. They have 6 votes. Okay. The moderates and liberals have 3. And until people vote and vote Harris in, and then hopefully she'll have the Senate and the House, and she can expand the size of the U.S. Supreme Court. Adam Schiff, who didn't used to be for it, probably the future senator here, almost certainly the future senator here in California, has changed from thinking that might be a bridge too far to saying, no, we have to expand the number of justices on the U.S. Supreme Court to 11 or 13, or else, you know, your generation, younger people, will have to live under this yoke of 30 years of this right-wing court. And they brought us to this situation. Had they not undone Roe v. Wade, had they not overruled Roe v. Wade in Dobbs, these situations, these deaths. So people shouldn't be naive. Oh, Trump says he's going to do this, he's going to do that. We know what Trump did. He put those 3 justices on the Supreme Court because he knew that they were going to do his bidding and overturn Roe v. Wade, and they did it. And this is the consequence, the election. The consequence is go vote, do something about it.
Agree. David Katz, thank you for being here. Always a pleasure. I enjoy our visits every week, and we'll see you next Thursday.
I don't see your comments. I hope they're not all about how can I say anything good about P. Diddy. He is someone who he's entitled to his constitutional rights like everyone else. People have to remember that. You know, it's not bishops and choir boys who give us the strength of our Constitution. It's these hard cases. Hard cases are the
Absolutely.
ones where the courts have a chance to say, no, our Constitution really means what it says. Due process is for real. Due for everybody.
Everybody. Absolutely. Thank you, David Katz. Bye-bye. See you next time. Bye. Love having David
The Mark
Katz
Thompson
on the show.
Show.
We are running a little bit behind, and I want to make sure to have enough time to talk to Turi Ryder. She is an author. She's written a book titled She Said What? What? And she's a former KGO talk show host. You can hear her on the radio, I believe, in multiple states. Let's find out. Turi Ryder, everyone.
Hi. I would hire David Katz. I would hire him for sure.
I totally would hire him. I mean, if he can defend P. Diddy, then I should be a cakewalk to defend him, whatever I'm doing.
You know, that is, as he said, the test. I'll never forget. I joined the American Civil Liberties Union when they defended the group that I found the most odious at that time. When the Nazis marched in the Jewish town of Skokie, I joined the American Civil Liberties Union because although I find Nazis, do I have to say I find Nazis disgusting? Let me stipulate that they're disgusting, but you know that this is the right that we have here, and if we don't protect people's rights to fair trials and all that stuff, then someday it may make a difference to the rest of us. So yeah,
absolutely.
Good for him. And P. Diddy, I hope that a jury of his peers finds him guilty of everything he's guilty of, which I suspect will send him to prison for a really long time. Yeah. And he and R. Kelly can write letters back and forth.
Oh God. Well, these guys are allegedly so creepy. I'm telling you.
Well, yeah.
We talked about at the end of the conversation with David Katz, abortion and Lawrence O'Donnell. And last night, Mr. O'Donnell gave a second part two of the state of women's reproductive health care in this country. And I have some more video that I wanted to show, and I'm hoping that maybe we can comment on it afterward. Sure. Albert, I hope you have it ready. But this is, again, last night from MSNBC. And the issue is this second death now, where this woman was too scared to even call because she knew that she could be investigated. This is in the state of Georgia. So here's a more video from Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC from last night.
Kim, is this in the rundown?
It is. Right under 12:30.
Okay, just give me like.
Okay, we'll give you a couple seconds. But it's very powerful when you talk about and as mentioned a little bit earlier, you talk about the fact that women are truly dying because of the policies enacted under Trump and George W. Bush, who both are responsible for putting these people on the court that then voted to strip our rights away.
There is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
What I wanted to say about all of this is that there is this position that's really uncomfortable to be in, but you know when you're in the position, and the position is your views. You know that people's views are not going to change unless they're in a situation where this particular thing directly affects them. And there are two specific issues where, in general, as a talk show host, I know that it's unlikely people's opinions will change on abortion unless they're pregnant or know someone who's pregnant and needs one, or on guns unless they're shot or someone they know and love is shot. And as you know, that personal connection is when all of a sudden the veil drops from your eyes and you go, oh, holy smokes, this is not as clear cut as I have always been told that it was. Yeah. This is not, just women. What were we told for years? Women use abortion as birth control, which is a load of garbage. Yeah. Because who the heck, who wants to use abortion as birth control? Like, there are so many other easy peasy options available, and there's Planned Parenthood, or there used to be, in just about every state. And the times when you would need an abortion are because your birth control has failed. Maybe there was bad planning as far as a date. Maybe there was date rape. Maybe there's a medical emergency. Maybe you're in an abusive situation and you were raped inside by intimate partner. That's when typically something goes wrong and you think, oh boy, now I really need the help. And Kamala Harris has been very wise at the convention. She brought women who never anticipated that they would be in the position of needing this kind of health care. And the reason why you are seeing abortion rights codified in states like Kansas, where I grew up, is that there's almost no woman that you could point to who doesn't know someone who has been in desperate need of pregnancy termination. And we don't talk about it. We lie about it. It's unfortunate if Lawrence O'Donnell is the person talking about it, because he's never been pregnant. But if women start to get honest with each other, and they start to understand that young lady down the street who never had kids, and you always wondered why she never had kids, there's probably there may be a reason for that she never talks about. Those people whose daughter died mysteriously in Mexico when abortion wasn't available.
Yep.
She wasn't on vacation in Mexico. And we all, if we think hard, we all know someone. And I know I have a girlfriend who married a very conservative guy, big fan of Donald Trump. He's got opinions about all that stuff. And he started going on about, these women who just want to take a pill. And my girlfriend, who loves her husband but disagrees with him about most political things, looked at him and said, "Do you know that I was raped when I worked as a waitress?" Shut him right up.
Yep. Well, it leads me to this new commercial for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And this is what Lawrence O'Donnell ends up commenting on. The commercial, I'll warn you, I mean, as we've been talking about sexual assault, it's graphic, and the subject matter, I guess, could be triggering for someone. So I just want to throw that warning out. But here's the commercial for Kamala Harris.
I've never slept a full night my entire life. I was 5 years old when my stepfather abused me for the first time. I just felt like I was alone on a planet with a monster. I was 12 when he impregnated me. I just remember thinking, I have to get out of my skin. I can't be me right now. Like, this can't be it. I didn't know what to do. I was a child. I didn't know what it meant to be pregnant at all. But I had options. Because Donald Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, girls and women all over the country have lost the right to choose, even for rape or incest. Donald Trump did this. He took away our freedom.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Hadley Duvall was 5 years old the first time her stepfather abused her. 5 years old. 12 years old when she got pregnant. The abortion ban writers pretend that a 12-year-old could look up the law in her state, find out if there's an exception to the Trump abortion ban for rape and for incest, and then apply for her abortion. Apply where? How? What is she supposed to do? Drive herself to the courthouse? Convince a judge all by herself? How could she possibly do that? How could she convince anyone? Then she drives herself at age 12 to the doctor with a permission slip to get an abortion. And how does a mother who is dying in a hospital bed get to a courthouse to prove to a judge that she's dying so that a doctor can perform a routine D&C after that woman has had a miscarriage? When you're writing an abortion ban with those so-called exceptions, you could leave the enforcement of those exceptions to doctors. Let the doctors assess the patients and decide if they're telling the truth about being raped by a member of their family. Let a doctor decide if the life of a mother is endangered by a pregnancy or a miscarriage. The Republican men who write abortion bans do not trust pregnant women and girls, and they absolutely do not trust doctors about anything. And so they have come up with complex schemes that really mean there are no real exceptions, that the exceptions are just a rhetorical crutch for Republican politicians like Donald Trump. Here's how much Georgia Republicans don't trust doctors. They actually—
That's good. Thank you, Albert.
Doctors.
I appreciate it. What he's saying there is that there is no such thing as an exception. That it's a hoax to think that when you write in an exception that someone's going to actually figure out how complicated and what the hoops are to jump through to make it happen in a crisis situation. And he has a really good point.
And then there's Donald Trump in the quote close quote debate, which was to my mind just kind of watching a maniac raving on camera for a while. That this crazy stuff, where people allow abortion at the 9th month. And I'm thinking, what, where are you even getting this stuff? But
Lies.
People I know who are normally sane people have consumed this media for so long that they're untethered from reality. This didn't just start as Mr. Katz just pointed out. This didn't just start with Donald Trump. This has been going on since Ronald Reagan, and it's kind of that little chipping away. And one of the things that was done to women in the name of right to life was this war on Planned Parenthood, as though Planned Parenthood provided nothing but 9-month terminations of pregnancy. I mean, it's absurd. And again, the women who have not spoken up. There was a young woman I remember distinctly. Her rebellion against her liberal university parents was that she became a devoutly conservative, born again observer of all biblical laws as she saw them, and she was then picketer at Planned Parenthood. She was also a producer of mine at the radio station where I worked. And something went wrong on a date. Who's going to throw the blame around? Not
Right.
I. And she was pregnant. And she came to me and she said, I'm going to keep the baby, but I don't have insurance and I don't have. And I said, okay, well, go to Planned Parenthood. They'll help you.
Right.
She said, it's an abortion mill. I said,
no, it isn't.
If you trust me at all, go to Planned Parenthood. If you want, I'll go with you. So she went by herself because she's a brave young woman. And she got the pregnancy support she needed. She got the vitamins. She got the checkups. She got the ultrasound. She got all of the health care that one would associate with a wanted pregnancy. And into the bargain, it's a caucus state. She got to give a dressing down to the women in her caucus and the men who were talking about these irresponsible teenage mothers. And she pointed out she was getting a lot of prenatal care and was going to do right by this kid. And they had to shut right up. But I asked her, how was your experience at Planned Parenthood? And she said, they were thoroughly supportive of my choice.
Right.
And I said to her, okay, so how do you feel about that? She said, I wish I could apologize for all the picketing and yelling I did. She said, but I wrote them a check that I could afford, and I keep in touch with her. She writes them a check every year.
Wow.
There is, and she's done very well. She's raised her child. He's an engineer. She's a trained engineer, like a real EE engineer, and she supports her family, and she is not, I mean, she is exactly what we mean by choice. We mean actually having medical capacity for these women, not these BS like problem pregnancy, come here so we can talk you out of an abortion and do nothing for you. But this is where it started, this blackballing of any kind of health care for women. And if you ever had a question about whether most of these folks genuinely care about women, look what they've tried to do to free low-cost, accessible women's health care for decades now. And there's your answer of what they're really all about.
You are in the Midwest, and I know you're doing radio in the Midwest, right?
I do, yes. Some.
You want to tell us where people can find you?
Sure. You can find me sometimes on WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk. You can find me twice a week, not doing anything political, but just having big old fun with a reporter girlfriend of mine on my podcast. You can, of course, I'd love it if you wanted a copy of my book, which is a lot funnier than I've just been, I hope. And that's available at your independent bookstore or on Amazon. And there's an audiobook. And I think that's everything. But just Google my name and you can find me. I'm easy to find.
The book is called She Said What? There's the cover of it. Life on the Air, full of amazing, funny stories. Some of them, I assume, are from the Bay Area.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think I'm sure people know that you had a time working in one of the traffic and news centers.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell you, Kim is awesome. I've never seen anybody write a story, understand a story faster than she does.
Oh, you're so nice.
And I'd been doing talk, and then I needed healthcare because I had a kid with special needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't doing talk at the fancy talk station anymore. And they took me as news and traffic, not nearly as good as you, in the middle of the night. And the guy who was the boss at the big news and talk station made a big gloating show of like, oh, how far the mighty have fallen. One day you're doing talk radio on my station, and the next minute. And it just so happened that someone in his newsroom also worked at this news traffic station. And he said, do you know she's over there doing that job because she just had a kid in really hazardous health? Shut that guy right up. Whee!
Yep.
Every now and then in the universe. But it's fun. It's fun sometimes to tell all under different names and monikers, because then you can tell more of the truth or bigger, better lies.
Absolutely. An interesting book and full of interesting stories. She Said What? But you are in the Midwest, and I'm here in California in my little political California blue bubble. I'm wondering what you're seeing as far as the political climate in the Midwest.
Well, we are a bubble of blue, you know.
Okay.
Illinois has Governor Pritzker, and Chicago kind of rules the state, and I'm in Chicago, and we're in the weird position, more so even than California. If we wanted to, we could just ignore all the Republicans. However, because we are a strong pro-choice state, and because we are a strongly Democratic state, we have basically a traffic jam coming over the border to access the very thing we were just talking about, abortion health services. People from Iowa, our border state, people from Indiana, border state, people who are under siege in Wisconsin, where some of that is on the ballot this time. We are doing it for the Midwest, and I will be, because things are so secure here. I'm going to go with friends up to Wisconsin and walk precincts to see if we can make sure that blue wall is the blue wall in Wisconsin. But it's a tough one. It's especially tough because Michigan, our neighbor across the lake, is all stuck with this vote. What is it now? Uncommitted. And Michigan, which just barely supported Biden in the last election, it's going to be razor thin. And they got that fabulous governor whom I worship and adore. So, Illinois, come on down if you need to breathe some blue air and you're in one of the border states. We will take you, and then go back up and walk a precinct for a Democrat.
You were talking about people saying mean things, as we're talking about it in regards to radio. But a couple of days ago, Trump sat down at this rally with his former press secretary and Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sorry, her name escaped me for a moment. I should be so lucky to never remember it again.
The queen of the smoky eyeliner.
We're talking about mean girls, mean people saying mean things. She didn't have to say this, but she talks to Trump, and she basically takes the swipe at Kamala Harris for not having biological children. Kamala Harris, who is a stepmother to two, from their teenage years to now, in their 20s. And she takes a swipe saying because Kamala Harris doesn't have her own biological children, she somehow has no one to keep her humble.
Yeah, it's gratuitous nastiness. And
it is.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders has been a practitioner of that. And I'm going to refrain from pointing out the contrast between her words and her ostensible personal spiritual practice here. But kindness does not seem to run through her veins. And it's weird. I think Donald Trump just sort of brings this out of people. You know how they used to tell you when you got a rattlesnake bite, you had to do that, suck the venom out and spit it.
Sure.
It's weird. It's like whenever you're around Donald Trump, you just have to spew poison to be on his good side. It's the strangest thing. And he's not happy if people are happy. He's happy if people are aggrieved and vindictive or worshiping
Angry.
him.
Yes.
And so I would hope, and to be fair to poor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, there were a lot of people on the left who treated her really nastily. You may recall she showed up in a restaurant and the wait staff wouldn't serve her. And,
Right.
that level of, and I think that was wrong. I mean, she was there with her family for dinner and they embarrassed her and shamed her and humiliated her. And I don't think she's a pretty tough cookie, but that kind of stuff really sinks in and it can make you a nasty and vindictive person. And I think that whatever little seed of that she had was certainly watered and fed during her time working for Trump.
Well, one of the things that happened after Sarah Huckabee Sanders makes these comments about Kamala Harris is that her husband, Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff's first wife, has come out in support once again of Kamala Harris, saying, can't believe that you would say this, that and she took to X to say this. She said, Cole and Ella keep us inspired, the children in question, to make the world a better place. I do it through storytelling. Kamala Harris has spent her entire career working for the people of all families. And she said, that keeps you pretty humble. It says a lot because this relationship between wife number one and wife number two is always, fraught with tension. And these people have everything against them for being friends or working together. And maybe they don't hang out, but that wife one defends wife number two, it speaks volumes to me.
And it's classy. And here's the other thing about Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She doesn't benefit. It doesn't benefit because the people who already love that nasty thing about Trump and all of that nastiness, they're already on board with him. But the undecided voters that he's going to need, a lot of them are step parents. A lot of them love their stepchildren. Some of them have adopted their stepchildren. Who does it help to say stuff like that? Who's going to go, you know what? I was undecided, but seeing as she pointed out that Kamala Harris doesn't have biological children, and that makes her a non-empathetic or a non-humble person. Yeah, I buy that. Who? It's just tone deaf. And so many people. I'm lucky that I married late enough that if we can't stand each other, we've only got 40 years to maybe endure it. So I've got the original model. But yeah, I mean, we made a deal that probably we got married so late that even if a good marriage, in my opinion, you only want to kill each other twice a day. And with this in mind, we've survived. So, but my friends, I mean, I know almost no friends with original marriages, almost none. And they are careful when they remarry that their second spouse will at very least be thoughtful and kind to their children. Otherwise, you end up with a Disney movie.
There's one other story I wanted to go through, and I know we're at the end of the show, so I'm going to hope that we can get through it really quickly, but I saw this video, and I thought it was so interesting. It's from the Miss Universe pageant, where Miss Jamaica 2024, her name is Rachel Severa, is asked the final question of the night. And the question is, what qualities do men like in women? And I think Albert has the video. Here's what the answer was. We would not have seen this answer years ago, but this is the answer in 2024.
Okay.
And like in women.
That's a very interesting question. I think as a progressive woman, it's very important to focus on who we are authentically and what we can offer to the world, the impact that we can make on the world, how we can empower and inspire others rather than what men like in us.
Yeah, yep, that's it.
Look at that.
There
in
you
2024.
go.
I mean,
Okay.
this used to be a pageant question where, men, I hope men like that I'm kind and I'm nurturing and whatever. No, she didn't take that bait. She comes right out and says women should be who they want to be, their authentic selves. If you can inspire others in the world, that's good enough. And who cares what men think about you?
Thank you very much. I think I may move to Jamaica if it's a world of women just like that. And it's true. You can earn your own money. You can buy your own house. You can engrave your own sterling if that's what matters to you. I still remember I had made a deal with myself that if I hadn't gotten married by age X, and I wanted an engagement ring that badly, I'd just buy it for myself. All of the stuff that women traditionally needed from men, it's shifting. It's like a kaleidoscope. When you look through the kaleidoscope and you see one design and then you move it just a little bit and the whole picture changes. The things that women are asking of men are very different now. And the better question, I think, would have been, what do women have a right to expect from men at this point?
Yeah, it's definitely indicative of shifting perspectives in the world, and I'm glad to see it.
Yeah. Bravo. Yes.
Turi Ryder, author of She Said What, talk show host on radio stations from San Francisco to Chicago. Thank you for being here. You're awesome.
Thank you. It was lots of fun. I was honored to be asked.
Absolutely. I hope to have you back soon. Thank you, Turi.
Thank you.
Bye. And so we come to the end of the Mark Thompson Show. So many good comments today. And whether we agree with each other or whether we don't, I respect your opinion, and I'm glad that you've come here and found a safe place to express it. And I hope we can do it all again tomorrow. I'll be on the After Party Live, kind of a lighthearted, non-political show. That happens next. Please come subscribe if you haven't yet, even if you don't stick around for the show. The After Party Live here on YouTube is next. And tomorrow, Mark will be back for the Mark Thompson Show, along with Albert and myself. Friday Fabulous Florida, Michael Schur, Michael Snyder. Going to be an excellent show. Thank you for everything today, Albert. You rock.
Thank you, and we're back to our normal, and Mark for the full show tomorrow as well.
And he's still remote, but he'll be here, and we'll make it happen. Absolutely. I love it. Again, I'll see you at the After Party Live. I'll see you back here on the Mark Thompson Show, 11 a.m. Pacific tomorrow, and I hope you have a really great rest of your day.
For the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, and I see some people already joined the Facebook group. We mentioned it, so do that. Head over to
Facebook, Mark Thompson discussion page. Bye-bye.